Knock, knock.
Who's there?
It's Dr. Brown.
Hi, Dr. Brown. How are you today? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for this amazing conversation ahead of us. And we're going to, well, first of all, I'm going to tell the listeners and everyone tuning in today a little bit about you and why you're here today and why you're on the show, and give everyone a little bit of an overview. And then we're going to dive into some incredible content that I know is going to support and serve so many people. Dr. Brown is a certified pediatric pulmonologist and a sleep medicine physician. So we are definitely going to be talking about sleep today. Predominantly, you work with children to help them sleep better, to breathe better, and by extension, help improve the sleep of their parents. And this is why we are connected and why we're going to dive into this amazing content today. A speaker, an educator, a writer, a founder of the Restful Sleep MD, which you're all going to be able to find in the show notes today. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to dig into, what sleep is all about, and talk a little bit more about, all the things that surround that. So thank you for coming on and sharing your amazing talents with us. I really want to start off with, we're going to dive into so much stuff around sleep today, but I want to kick it off by kind of asking the question I think is on a lot of people's minds, and definitely mine. And, we reached out on social media and connected with our audience and our members. And this question that comes up is, how much sleep do we actually need? Because we hear this like, we need 8 hours, we need this and that, but I feel like everyone's a little bit different. And I'd love to hear the science behind how much we actually need.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I was talking with someone recently, and the person was like, well, I'm told I need about 6 to 9 hours. And I'm like, wait, come on, guys, you're like slowly but surely moving. Just slowly but surely moving the needle, to favor what's going on. So I said, no, those recommendations have not changed. The National Sleep Foundation actually put out this guidelines regarding the number of hours we need, which varies by age. And so you have like children sleeping, think about the newborn sleeping anywhere between 14 to 17 hours. And then we talk about school age kids that could sleep, around like 9 to 11 hours. And then our teens, 8 to 10 hours. And adults, usually between 7 to 9 hours. And the way that is that, again, it's a range. So you have some people who are like sort of shorter sleepers and some people who are long sleepers. Some of those extremes are kind of genetically implied, but anywhere between 7 to 9 hours really is ideal. So I was saying, we go through different cycles of sleep, right? We go through like REM sleep, and that REM sleep is broken down into light sleep, intermediate sleep, and deep sleep, which is that really deep restorative sleep that really helps you recover from exercise, get ready to prepare you for exercise. Like it's all that good, rich stuff. And then the dream sleep, which is your REM sleep. And those cycles, we cycle through that through the night. Each cycle is anywhere between 90 and about 110 minutes. And we have about 5 of those cycles when we do it well. So do the math, that gives you that range. So that's kind of like a rough idea or estimate of how we arrive at that. And that's really, those requirements have not changed. But of course, with the globalization and everybody being just on all the time, sleep deprivation has really, really, really taken its toll on people. But yeah.
That's really good information, and I think that comes back to that kind of window which we hear a lot, right? We hear the 8 hours, which makes sense if that range is 7 to 9. And it's funny, we always talk about this in my house because I'm a strict on like 7 hours works for me. I know if I go to bed at the same time and I'm in bed at 9, I'm asleep by 10, I wake up around 5 every day. Alarm, no alarm. And that's then awesome. My wife's always amazed because she's always like, how do you do that? She's like, I get 9 and sometimes that's not enough. And and I guess the follow-on question from that is it for you, those sleep cycles kind of predetermined? Is the genetics involved in how long you personally need to sleep, or is that more of a routine and habit thing that happens as we go through life?
Yeah, so that's another excellent question. I'm loving this already. So really, there are different elements to sleep. good sleep, restful sleep, right? And you know what you mentioned with your wife sleeping 9 hours and sometimes still feeling tired. So when we're looking at sleep, even though we talk a lot about like the number of hours, I focus on three things: the quantity of sleep we get, which is, you know, the number. And now one thing I love what you mentioned as well, there's the sleep, number of hours of sleep you get, and then the sleep opportunity you have. So if you're trying to get 7 hours of sleep, then you don't start getting ready to go to sleep. And if you plan to sleep anywhere between, if you plan to fall asleep by 10 p.m., you're not going to start getting ready for bed at 10 p.m. We're saying everything is done so that at 10 p.m. your eyes are closed. So that means that you need to give yourself sleep opportunity. And so if you're looking to get 7 hours of sleep, you probably need at least an opportunity that's, you know, enough to get those number of hours in. So that's just quantity. The other element we talk a lot about is the quality of sleep, you know, which is affected by several things. I think about them as like some internal factors as well as external factors. So think of internal factors like, you know, if you're stressed, if you're anxious, if you're, you know, if you have a medical condition like sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome or other things like that. Those things can affect the quality of your sleep, such that even if you're getting 9 hours of sleep, you still wake up feeling exhausted. So there's that. And then the external factors, you know, like our caffeine, the habits, like you're talking about, our sleep environment, you know, or behaviors, right? Technology, all those things are external factors as well that can affect the quality of our sleep. And then the third thing is the sleep timing. And that's really, really critical because we all have an internal clock or the circadian rhythm that really helps us to know when to go, you know, kind of cues our body to fall asleep and when to wake up. And some people are a little bit shifted. So those are more of the night owls. And then some people are sort of a little bit advanced. And so that those are more of the morning larks. If you're telling me you wake up at 5 a.m., then you're kind of a morning lark. So now imagine if you tried to sleep in and you try to force yourself to stay in bed till 7 a.m. It's going to be a mess. You're going to be frustrated. Same if you have someone who's a night owl and then they try to get into bed by, you know, like maybe like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., they're going to be frustrated because it's like sleep is just not going to become calm. So the timing is also a piece that's very important. So those are just some of the things that I consider when we're talking about sleep in this holistic pattern.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway for everyone listening. So if you didn't write that down, go back and write it down, or you know, get those notes at some point, because taking those three things into account and really looking at those things is so important. And it makes complete sense, like you said, right? That everyone's kind of geared in a certain direction as to where sleep falls for them. And I've always struggled with concentration later in the day. I struggle with staying awake after, like, you know, 9. If I do something that's slow, like I might sit on the sofa, or I might put a TV show on like later in the evening, like I struggle to stay awake because as soon as I'm starting to calm down, everything shuts down. I'm kind of ready for bed. And it's funny how we need different times. So you said if someone's more of a night owl, so Nikki, my wife, and everyone will know listening because she's often on here hosting with me as well, is she's definitely more of a night person. She gets up later in the mornings than I do. However, what's funny is she'll go to bed when I go to bed and she'll still get up 2 hours later. So she definitely loves sleep. And our daughter is very much the same. She always tells me when she wakes up, "Oh, Daddy, I think I might need to stay in bed longer. I love sleeping. I'm so tired." So they definitely love sleep, which is great. I unfortunately have been through this pattern in my life where sleep is really an inconvenience to me. But I understand why it's important. And I think this is key as well, because you might be on one side if you're listening today and you might be really like, oh, you know, it gets in the way. So I'm that person. I historically had really poor sleep habits, didn't get what I needed. So because it was an inconvenience and I viewed it like that, what I did was I built this logical structure around sleep, as I expressed. And what it did is it helped me to say, okay, this is where I need to be sleeping. It is an inconvenience. I don't like it, but I know I'm going to be up at this time. I know where I'm productive. So if I can build this routine and get that time I need, then I can deal with it being in my life, being in the way sometimes, because I know how important it is. And you're going to probably, I am assuming people are either one side or the other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is so true. I love that because, you know, for some people, and I think what you have done is just the right thing, which is, okay, I need to sleep. I mean, I want to conquer the world, but I realize that in order to do that, I need to be sound in my mind. I need to be clear in my thinking. And you have experienced what it feels like to not get enough sleep in terms of your performance. And so you've been able to prioritize it, not necessarily be like completely in love with it, right? If there was a hack whereby we didn't need to sleep, I'm sure a lot of people would have would be investing in it, right? But this is like it's not just like it's just not just like an option. Like I tell people, sleep is not just the end of the day, right? It's the beginning of your morning, right? Like it's healing, it's restoration, it's a biological necessity. So it's almost like we tell our kids to eat their veggies. They don't like it, but okay, you got to figure out how you want to do it. So my son loves to have it in smoothies, like, whatever it is, just kind of get it done, looking beyond your, like the inconvenience as it may seem, to this is actually what I need to survive, to thrive, to live my fullest potential.
Yeah. And it's much like, we're talking to, in our audience, and what we do, within our business is, we talk to busy parents that are trying to move more and feel good. And, just like exercise, is it something sometimes it is an inconvenience, and sometimes it's like, oh, that 30 minutes I could spend sending emails or doing this or making the kids lunch. And it can be an inconvenience, but, we talk to building those habits and building that system around your life where you can fit that in. And that's what we try and do, is support that on our side with, a convenient platform where people can log on and do it quickly in their lunch break or when the kids are napping. So it's much the same as sleep. It's building that habit and that routine, because even if it is inconvenient and you've got lots to do, staying up till midnight and then trying to get up at 5 a.m. is not going to serve anybody very well. So we have to build that in. And I guess it also, like exercise, it comes around to setting boundaries around your time and where you give to other people and where you allocate for your fitness, your sleep, your nutrition, etc. So yeah, really important message. Now, so we kind of touched a little bit kind of on the kind of role modeling as well, right? So, you touched on that as well, having that sleep, showing what it can do for us the next day, so we can wake up in a good space and we can, be a great parent or whatever it is you might be doing. That's so important that we do that to our kids, and, we show them good sleep quality, and this is what we do. And, we try and talk about that. I need my time to unwind just like you do, etc. So I think that's really, really important. So what I wanted to do there is use that as a kind of launch pad for where these benefits sit. So obviously we want to role model them. Now, when we're role modeling with kids, this often comes to a conversation when we're having them, and also the internal conversations with ourselves, to be that role model, to say, this is why it's important. So I'd love to hear firstly a little bit about where the benefits are, for parents, and where the benefits are for kids, adults, kids, however you want to see it. Is what are the sleep benefits? What are the main things? And are they exactly the same, or are they different between adults and children?
Yeah. So essentially we could start from top to bottom. I can convince you, and I don't think I even need to convince you, that every system, every part of your body benefits from sleep. And it turns out that every organism has a period of sort of quiescence or rest or sleep. So actually they've looked at like fruit flies sleep, like all the way to like mammals. It's only us human beings that try to fight sleep, So that being said, again, because sleep is a biological requirement. So if we start from the top, you see that sleep has some work of cleansing toxic products out of your brain. So you hear that, that's huge, because what happens is over the course of the day, your brain, it uses energy, right? So it has deposits, waste products, so to speak. Some of those things include substances like beta amyloid, which has been shown to be associated with conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. So those literally deposit on the surface of your brain over the course of your wakefulness. And so when you sleep, there's a system that kicks in. Remember, like your lymphatic system in your bloodstream that kind of gets rid of like waste products from your blood? We have a similar system in our brains. It's called the lymphatic system. So there's a G lymphatic system. And this literally during sleep kind of washes those products off the surface of your brain. So the same way we're not going to leave our kitchen sink clogged and full of crap, we're not going to do the same for our brains. So that's for me, that's just such an important piece, because with that comes like that fogginess, memory issues, lack of clarity, and things like that. So that in and of itself, that cleansing system or removal of biological waste products is really, really important. And then we look at other parts of our bodies. Our physical health is really key to our getting sleep. So I'd mentioned you have this stage of sleep called the deep sleep. During that stage, for children, you have release of growth hormone. So they actually need that. And we've seen studies where children who don't get enough sleep actually manifest with growth problems and failure to thrive and things like that. So growth hormone is released. A lot of other hormones are released during sleep. That's the stage where you actually get tissue repair. Cells that have been damaged over the course of the day get restored and repaired during sleep. And then recovery is also critical. And that's why you'll see a lot of like athletes and things like that really now talking about prioritizing sleep, because they've seen that science and made those connections. So our physical health, and studies have shown like insufficient sleep can cause, of course, increased risk of heart disease, increased risk of strokes, increased risk of hypertension, obesity, and things like that. And when we talk about fitness and weight loss and making healthy choices, sleep is actually very, very critical as well, because in terms of our metabolism, we have two hormones that are really released and are related to our ability to know when to stop eating and know when we're hungry. So there's the leptin, which is essentially your satiety hormone. And that's really what lets you know, like, okay, I've had enough. And then your ghrelin is like the hunger hormone. And that lets you know, okay, it's time to eat, I'm hungry. When you don't sleep enough, there's a flip of those two hormones. And so what happens is you just feel like craving, and you're not just craving like carrots, you're craving more of a carrot cake. So you're craving high calorie dense foods. And so imagine how that impacts your ability to lose weight, your ability to process things, especially if that's occurring at night. There's studies also that have shown that you are at a higher risk of insulin resistance, which makes you prone to developing diabetes over time when you don't sleep enough. So those are just some of the health issues. Oh, I should have mentioned, I know, especially now we're in the middle of a pandemic, it turns out our immune system is repaired during sleep. And so the ability to fight infection is related to sleep. And they've done so many studies where they've sleep deprived to a group of people and gotten another group of people enough sleep. And then they introduced, I think it was the rhinovirus, to see who catches it. And the people that were more susceptible and were more likely to catch even the common cold were those that were sleep deprived. And think of that in the setting of a COVID pandemic. The same has also been seen in people who have, in people's response to vaccination, the ability to respond. Now we're talking our COVID vaccines now, right? The ability to actually to mount good response to vaccination is actually also related to how much sleep you get. And then, finally, I'll just end by talking about our mood, our energy, our focus, our mental health is strongly related to good sleep. And this is for both. This is for adults as well as kids. So even though we're prioritizing, and I love what you said about role modeling, even though we're trying to get our children to sleep better, because we see how they are when they don't sleep well. We've seen that 2-year-old who missed a nap in the grocery store. That's exactly what we do. That's what we do on the inside when we don't get enough sleep. So it's for both parents as well as kids.
Yeah, so many great ones. I've got like 8,000 questions after that. But I'll start with, it's so common to see the, going back to the immune system, is that people are sick and they're tired and they're tired and they're sick. And I would always say when someone comes with those, complaints within, how can I move more? And I feel tired all the time. And then I'm always catching everything and I'm out. And I'm like, okay, number one on that hierarchy of importance is you need to recover. You need to sleep. And it makes sense that when we are unwell, you want more sleep. You want to stay in bed longer. You need a couple more hours because you're obviously recovering your immune system. It makes complete sense because it's been beat up a little bit, which I think a lot of people with obviously, 2 years into a pandemic and restrictions are lifting, is we're all getting a bit more exposure to things that we haven't seen, right? So, we just 3 weeks ago, we had this like cold and stomach flu in our house. And I was like, oh, that does still exist. And our immune systems are, grabbing hold, right? They're trying to fight these things that they've been kind of suppressed a little bit. So that makes complete sense. It's so many interesting things when it comes to mood and mental health. And I'll paint a picture of what I typically see within our, busy parents and trying to manage life, which is chaotic, is, think about when you wake up and you've had poor sleep and you need to make a nutritional choice for you and for your kids potentially. And then how does that play out? Like you said, where do those hormones start to affect what you choose or what you choose for your kids? How does that set them up for the day and set you up for the day from an energy standpoint, from a recovery standpoint? Nutrition is obviously so highly linked with sleep. Is then trying to get your kids ready to get out the door for school. What does that feel like when you're not in a great mood? Is everything a trigger for you rather than being able to approach that from a place of care and understanding? If your kid's also been to bed late, and then typically you're to bed late because you've got 2 hours of stuff to do after they've gone to sleep, there's that knock-on effect. Then how likely are you to feel motivated to exercise and move during the day, or maybe take that walk to school with your kids because you're running behind, because the mood's not there, you're not able to support them. And that's typically what they need when they're doing a task that, let's be honest, they're probably not massively excited about. So it just continues. And then we just have this knock on, what kind of choices do you make for a meal at dinner time when everyone's had their day, pushed back 30 minutes and everyone's tempers are frayed because they've been late for this and late for that. So there's this huge, just think about how that plays out. And it's so impactful. So, that's huge. Another huge takeaway. And there's one more thing I have to go to because this is massive. Cell regeneration and growth hormone. Now, you mentioned it in kids, but now I'm going to talk to that area. And obviously we touched on like the weight management stuff, which is obviously key. But now think about people that are trying to build strength and gain muscle. So not just your kids, but and as an adult. And people say, what's the best supplement? I want to gain muscle. I'm like, go sleep for 8 hours. Yes. Like, get your sleep in. Like, that's where you're going to get this recovery and repair that tissue damage. And this is something that gets missed massively. There's too many people, working late at night, getting up early to work out, taking pre-workout supplements, or, drinking a triple espresso to go work out. And they're not getting anywhere. They're not getting anywhere because they're not getting what they need first and foremost. So sometimes, know this, everyone listening, it's okay if you need to skip that morning workout to get those couple of extra hours sleep. You're going to get more benefit long-term from that. So huge, so many really important things.
Drop mic. That was awesome.
Absolutely. With the growth hormone, just out of interest, is that typically, do we see the same in adults to kids with that? Or is that, because you mentioned it with children particularly, because obviously it's so important as they grow, does that continue through life, and does it become more or less important from a growth hormone and cell regeneration as we get older?
No, we all go through that. We all go through that process of cell degeneration, and we need that. We need sleep for cellular repair. And, a lot of this work is something that we're still even understanding, but you can definitely see it, and they've had even mouse models where they've subjected them to sleep deprivation and looked over days of sleep deprivation and seen, that whole cell turnover, just really seeing that process completely just destroyed by lack of sleep. So this is something that we see across the board. You see it more, it seems more prominent in in children, because of course they're going through very rapid phases of development, right? And through rapid stages of growth. And think about the newborn. The newborn spends, 80% of their day sleeping. And there's a reason why. Their brains are growing, their bodies are growing, they're going through such rapid growth, and sleep is needed for that process. But we also definitely see that as well in adults.
Yeah, that's really impactful. So wherever you're listening from today, and wherever your situation, whatever your chaotic life is, it's obviously a massive part of that, and we all need to repair and regenerate. And we can't just assume that we're going to go, if anyone listening that's wanting to go on this health and fitness journey and wants to start to increase their activity level, be aware that the minute you increase it, you're going to need more nutrients to repair and recover. You're going to need that good quality sleep, not necessarily more, but you need to prioritize it and get that, because it all has, as you've heard, a knock-on effect. You can't just say, well, in this 24-hour period, I'm going to do this. Is the next day is important, and the break, if you like, that sleep puts in between those days is super important. So huge. Now, with that being said, there is a big question here around the barriers. So I know there's going to be some objections, people listening, there's going to be comments coming in where people say, yes, but, and this is something you hear in coaching all the time. And in my way, yes, but this is, all the reasons why, I need to do this. I can't get to bed that early. I can't wake up that time. I can't, whatever it might be. So there's all these things. Or the biggest common one is, I have insomnia, or they think they have insomnia. I don't know if these people are clinically diagnosed, but they have this insomnia pattern and they can't fall asleep. And there's no restful sleep in there, or they're not falling into a deep sleep. So I'd love to hear about what things are kind of out there in our environments that are stopping us. And then we can dive into how we build this, these habits around these things, and what are some key strategies to maybe limit some of those things, remove them, and help us get that restful sleep we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's several barriers. Again, a lot of them you already kind of talked about. Like the first of all, I would say is the lack of just understanding of what sleep does. I've had people just say, well, it's just something we do at the end of the day because it's nighttime.
Yeah.
And so people may not realize that sleep is not just a cure for sleepiness, right? That's what we just talked about. It's not just a cure. It helps with sleepiness, but beyond that, it's medicine. It's healing, right? So I think when we come from that understanding, like the same way I'm taking my vitamins, like you mentioned, and my supplements, I need to take my sleep really seriously. But I think that's the first barrier, just that mindset and understanding of how important it is. And then the second very important piece, especially for your audience who are like busy parents and things like that, are the obligations. The obligations are endless between work, the kids, family, community, business, you name it. All those things encroach on our time for sleep. And so those are just like, and that's where they're good things. You want to build a career, you want to build a business, you want to be there with your children, you want to, have these dreams come true. So they're not necessarily bad things, but the problem is that when we have 5 or 6 things that are priority, sleep is usually not one of those 5. Ends up taking the back burner. So those are just huge pieces as well that can impact our ability to sleep. And, again, children not sleeping well, that in and of itself is a big one especially for younger parents who have younger children who their kids just wake up all the time and things like that. That's also another one. Then the third, I would say, are, again, it could be internal factors. So back to those things, stressors, which we are perceiving internally, anxiety, depression, mental illnesses, that parent who eventually has put everybody else to bed, ready to go to bed, hits the bed, and then the mind starts to race, so those kind of things can be a barrier to your sleep. And then what do we do when you get to that situation? You may be like, okay, you know what, I'm giving up. I can't do it. I'm just going to start my day early and get some work in. And so it becomes this self-perpetuating factor. And then some other things like, we talked about a little bit, if you have medical disorders, medical conditions, that can be a barrier to getting good quality sleep. And then finally, it's the habits. It's the things that we're doing that we may not even realize it, that is taking our sleep away. So caffeine, because you need that jolt of energy, either to go work out, you need it to do a good thing, right? You need it, but it does affect your ability to fall asleep. Or you're hanging out with, your friends and it's late at night and we have a large amount of alcohol, which takes time, or which when it metabolizes in our bodies, and if it's close to bedtime, can actually disrupt our sleep. So those are some habits. Or we're bringing our laptops and our phones and things like that into bed with us. Essentially, not necessarily like we're trying to self-sabotage ourselves, because we don't know better. We just want to be more productive, or, have a hard time setting boundaries, things like that. They end up then impacting our ability to sleep.
Yeah, so many great points, and the technology thing is huge for so many people. And we'll definitely dive into that in a second. Your kids having good sleep is a massive part of this when it comes to being a busy parent, and really anybody around you too, because if you sleep in the same bed or room as someone who doesn't sleep well, good luck. Because that happens, right? Like we've all been sick in our house a fair bit over the last few weeks. So having those, coughing fits and waking up and going to use the bathroom, all those things that happen once you're not in that deep sleep it affects everybody else as well, right? So you only have to have a night of that, or if you have a young kid like we did that had stomach flu and threw up on me at 3 a.m., you know what that does to you, right? Like it affects everyone in the house. So it's definitely about prioritizing your sleep, but prioritizing your household sleep as a whole, right? And I'm sure that can be a whole other challenge when you've got teenagers, which I don't have yet, but will be on its way in a few years. So I'm aware. Now, with the kids' sleep, obviously we spoke about prioritizing your sleep and how much we need, and then obviously knowing how much kids need is also really, really important. I wanted to touch a little bit more, probably for the people with younger children, but the sleep training when it comes to kids, because as an adult we can kind of conceptualize it, we can be a bit more pragmatic and understand listening to this podcast or reading a book and knowing what we need to do, but a kid doesn't understand that yet. So I'd love to hear a little bit about is sleep training a great idea for kids? When should we be doing this? I'm a big believer in it, and I talk about the benefits. However, I'm not a medical doctor that understands sleep. So I'd love to hear kind of, what your thoughts are on that, and when do we start to do that, and how do we do it? Because I read a study once when Nikki, my wife, was pregnant, that said that the average parent is sleep deprived, new parent is sleep deprived for 7 years. And I said, hell no, am I being sleep deprived for 7 years? So I need a system so this doesn't happen. However, I'll pass it over to the expert. What are your thoughts on sleep training kids, and when should we be doing it?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And yes, that study is so sad, but it's true. Like, you're 7 years down the line, your kid is already in their room, they're sleeping well, but then the impact of their sleep difficulties still is affecting you, 7 years later. So absolutely. So the way I look at sleep training, I kind of see it as helping your child develop independent skills to sleep on their own, and we all can. And usually within the first, of course, within the first 3 to 4 months of life, where your child is transitioning from being, in the womb to now being outside, and they're trying to adjust to the day and night cycles, their brains haven't produced enough melatonin yet. So there's really nothing, everything's up for grabs at that time. But I can tell you, from about 4 to 6 months of age, definitely after 6 months of age, a child can develop skills for independent sleep. And I usually will recommend that if, some parents are lucky where they put their babies to sleep and kiss them goodnight, and they come back and the babies are awake the next morning and happy. And for most parents, that's not the issue. So from about 6 months, by then, as long as your child is gaining appropriate weight, they don't have they don't have any issues. You've checked with your doctor and it's okay. Usually you could start sleep training, because by then their brains can tell the difference between day and night. And then by then, they don't necessarily need a feeding in the middle of the night, as long as your doctor says they're okay. So that's important. They don't have a medical condition, they don't have any issues with weight gain, then that's absolutely fine. And I think sleep training gets a bad rap. People think sleep training and it's like, you think of the army and you think camouflage, and no. And so what does that look like? For most people, it's okay. Are you telling me I'm going to drop my baby in the crib and just walk out the door and the baby's crying all night? No, not at all. Absolutely not. That's an option. And I can tell you it works, but it doesn't work for most families. It's too emotionally trying. And it really sets them up for failure because they do it one night. They're like, oh my God, my heart can't take it. I'm not doing it again. And they're like, well, sleep training doesn't work. And I'm here to say, no, it does. There's specific systems that you can put in place that can be tailored to you, your personality, your child, your needs, your goals as a family that can really work for you. And that's something that I work families through, because it's no size fits. It's not a one size fits all approach, but absolutely, if you can set them up for sleep training as early, like I said, as like 6 months of age, you can literally be sure that you're setting them up for good. You may still have some bumps in the road, but if you set those systems in place early, even when you go through those bumps, you're already used to it. You know what I mean? You may need to make some modifications, but you can absolutely get them sleeping independently and spare yourself 7 years of sleep deprivation.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. We definitely did that. And before we dig into that more, I will share that dads listening, it's time to step up if you've got a newborn, because in my experience, the maternal side and the emotional, and this is not everybody, so take it or leave it, but in my experience, the mother struggles a bit more with that emotion, the emotional stress of doing that and having that, not that you, like you said, you're going to leave them in there all night, but it can be tough. And even we did ours in stages where we kind of sat by the side of the crib, and then we sat halfway through the room, and then by the door, and then gradually just kind of moved out, and it seemed to work. However, Nikki said to me, I'm not doing that. There's no way I can handle that. Like the constant, and also the patience needed for it. Like, she's not as patient as I am typically. So I was like, I'll do it. Like, I'm very logical. I can kind of suppress a little bit emotionally around it and do it. And it worked wonders for us in our house. So dads out there, if you can take on it, or maybe the least emotional parent can take on the burden of that, it works really, really well. And it's great to hear that, and I'm a big believer that we can train and build habits in anything we do, right? It takes discipline. Like you said, it can be emotionally stressful sometimes, but building a sleep habit, and as you said, building a sleep habit that works for you, that's so important. And everyone listening that is listened to our content before, is a member of our academy, knows that I talk about this all the time. There is no perfect way to do anything. There is a way that works for you. If you exercise and you hate it, you're probably not going to keep it up. If you choose a method of sleep training that you hate, guess what? You're probably going to say it didn't work, and you're going to move on. You choose a diet, a way of eating that does that, it doesn't work. It's exactly the same thing. Find something that works for you, something that you can enjoy the process of, and you will reap the benefits of it, because it's about consistency. It's about setting those boundaries, and it's so important. It crosses over through everything in life. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and it's so good to hear that we can set ourselves up for success with that, which is amazing. And what I wanted to go back to now, because we kind of jumped into the sleep training bit, is to go back to those other things that affect it. So if we can get that sorted out early on as a busy parent, we've got that routine going. How do we sort it out for us and make sure we can be successful? So when you spoke about barriers, you spoke about the environment that we're in. And then you spoke about technology. They're two big things that come up a lot for me as a coach with, working with clients. So first of all, what kind of environment should we be choosing or moving towards to benefit this restful sleep?
Absolutely. So an environment that is cool. And the reason why that is important is your core body temperature actually drops before you go to sleep. And that's part of that, your circadian rhythm. So that internal clock telling you when to sleep and when to wake up also controls very vital functions in your body, like your heart rate, your blood pressure, when you use the bathroom, when you feel hungry, and also your temperature rhythms. And so we also have a temperature rhythm. And as you're going to sleep around that, when that melatonin is getting produced, your core body temperature actually needs to drop for you to sleep well. So the way you can facilitate that, a couple of things I recommend is, as much as I love exercise, and I say you have to exercise if you want to sleep well, you have to sleep well if you want to exercise. But the timing is important. So you don't want to have too intense and too vigorous exercise about 2 hours or so before bed. So the reason why is what happens. Adrenaline pumps, right? Your heart rate surges and your core body temperature goes up. And that's those three things we need flipping up in the opposite direction for you to sleep. So rather than some intense workout just before bed, take a nice warm bath. And what that does is it opens up the blood vessels on your skin and gets the heat, it kind of radiates the heat outwards and helps your core body temperature come down. Most people say, oh, when I have my bath, I feel all warm and cozy. It's actually not true. Your core body temperature is dropping. So a bath is always good. Your environment, dropping the temperature in your bedroom as much as possible. Usually we'll say anywhere between like 65 to about 72 degrees, depending on your comfort level. It shouldn't be freezing cold where you're now uncomfortable, but it should be nice and cool. So that will promote good quality sleep. And then the other piece is the light. Your room should be very dark, because melatonin is a hormone of darkness. It's produced during the dark, and it's the sleep hormone that helps you to fall asleep. And so when your room is dark enough, it triggers the brain to start producing that melatonin. So you want to avoid sometimes some people are very sensitive to light. For me, the slightest crack of light is enough to keep me up. So I usually will wear a sleep mask. So if you need to wear a sleep mask, make sure. If you need to use blackout shades, especially around like the summertime and things like that, then you should do that. And then the third thing I usually will recommend about our environment is one that's noise free. So if you have a crying baby, if you have a snoring spouse, if you have, things like that can disrupt your sleep. So, sometimes if you have a noise, or if you live in a noisy neighborhood, right? Sometimes either using, earplugs or something of that sort. Sometimes you can mask the noise with either a noise machine. So it's not just for the baby. You as a parent can also use it. For the baby, it's also very, very helpful for your kids as well. Or like a fan, a ceiling fan or something that gives you that constant noise, but it's pleasant throughout the night. So those are just some tips for your environment.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. We always have an air filter, so we double up with that. So you have that like gentle hum, but you also get the air filter. So we had one of those in our daughter's room. Perfect. Since she was tiny. We have one in our room, and I was joking that Nikki likes to lie and listen for things at bedtime. She'd be like, "I can hear something. What's that?" I'm like, you live in a townhome. I'm like, you're gonna hear everything, right? It's like modern buildings, thin walls. So I'm like, air filter on. You can't hear it, so it's perfect. So yeah, I love that. So important. Now, you spoke about light. This is really important. So I want to go from that to, obviously we've got natural lights. We want to block out street lights, blackouts, like you said, have dim, low watt lights in your room, while you're getting ready for bed, etc. How does the blue light from technology affect you? Does it affect you the same way? And what kind of time limit should we be setting a time to shut these things off before, a certain time before bed?
That's an excellent question. Yes. So it's all kinds of light, but the blue wavelength light. And, it turns out, I know blue wavelength light gets a bad rap at nighttime, which it deserves. But sunlight, the number of lux and the exposure you get, even from just natural light outside, and the light from your technology, in fact, the natural light is actually higher in the lux quality. And that's why when we wake up in the morning, usually we recommend just get out there. It doesn't, even if it's on a cloudy day, that wavelength is beautiful and perfect to wake you up and to suppress melatonin. And at nighttime, you want to avoid the same exact thing. So I would say probably about 2 hours or so before bedtime, you really want to start to dim the lights around the house. If you have like a lot of like the bright LED lights, it's time. If you have a dimmer, that's perfect. You just slowly but surely, you don't have to do it in a very drastic way. Whether it's the lights in the living room, you want to kind of start to dim the overhead lights, you want to switch to the table lamps, things like that. So you really want to start to set that, probably I would say about 2 hours even before bed. Now, when it comes to that blue light, the problem also is not just the light itself, but the intensity and the closeness to our faces. So ideally, usually we'll say 30 to 60 minutes before bed, you want to really limit the exposure. And what this may look like is different for different people. For some people, if you can completely avoid it and read a book instead, transition towards board games or, paper books or something else that's more calming and relaxing as part of your routine, I think that's perfect. If not, Then, of course, you have all the filter apps on your phone that you could use. You also have blue light blocking glasses that you could incorporate. I recommend that, but then I always say you have to be careful, because the impact of technology is twofold, or maybe even three. One, apart from the light, the other P is the notifications and things like that you get. So even if you were like, you know what, I'm just trying to read a book on my phone, or I don't know, do some mindfulness practice on my phone, and then you get those notifications, those texts and things, all of a sudden you're finding yourself on social media, doom scrolling, and it's an hour later. Yeah. And, and light was not what caused that. It was not light, right? So that's one. And that's two. And then the third piece is just the arousal that it causes. If you think about teenagers, or even us as well, like you see something in the news on your phone, or it pops up as a notification, you feel stressed, you feel sad, you have all kinds of negative emotions that is not necessarily going to promote good sleep. So we start off with blocking off the light, but really have to set those boundaries as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and here's the good news is, if you might think, oh, well, it's really hard to do that, and I lose track of time. So if you go on, you can find settings in your phone and on your app that I do this. It has like a time where it blacks out on the screen. So that will remind me, but it'll also take the light down if I am finishing something. So that's important. Turn your notifications off. You can put a time limit on those. I just turn most of them off because they're constant distraction anyway. And that's a whole other conversation, but yeah, definitely do that. Get away from that environment. It'll help the mind unwind. And then you've also got to think about the other effect, and this is outside of sleep, but think about the instant dopamine hits that we're addicted to when we go on social media and we've got a comment or a like on something, or there's something that, there's that, you see that video that's funny, and you get all those hormone releases, which are not the best thing for you prior to sleep. So yeah, definitely wind the brain down. And that goes for obviously us, but think about it from your kids too. Like, we try and make sure there's no television. If there's tablets, it's always a certain time. There's a timer on there. So there's no tablet doesn't work after like 5 p.m. All those things that you can do. So there's some amazing tips in there. So much incredible information. I love that we were able to kind of, bring the episode, we're going to wrap up soon, is with those useful tips, right? So reducing that technology, reducing down the amount of light, promoting that cool environment to sleep, all those things that are going to help us. So I encourage everyone listening to just review what your routine looks like. Take that last 60 minutes of your day, know what time you need to be in bed, and take maybe an hour. And this is how I do it, is say an hour. What am I doing in that hour to help me? And, once you're falling asleep well and you're in that pattern, then great, you got it nailed. But if you're not, that would be the first thing to go to, right? Because I think people will lean to, there's something wrong with me, I can't get to sleep, rather than can I build these habits, much like health and fitness. So that's incredible. Before we wrap up the show, I want to just give you the opportunity to tell everyone where they can find out so much, because honestly, that amount of information is just a snippet of, I'm sure, the amazing things in your brain. So I'd love for everyone to know how to get in contact with you and find out more if they want to.
Yeah, thanks. I've had so much fun talking to you today. It's been just so exciting. So yeah, so a lot of what I do, again, I work with busy moms particularly. So I do offer some one-on-one coaching. So that's something that I think is, especially when you get to the point where you seem like you're doing all the right things, but it's your sleep is just not falling into place, or your child's sleep is not falling into place, and it's disrupting you. So, I definitely have that service that I provide, because I've been that person as a busy professional myself. So I've walked the walk, and I know the science, and I'm able to help people implement the same to get success. So the best place to find me is on my website. That's restfulsleepmd.com. And then I'm also on Instagram at restfulsleepmd. And those are the first places. And a lot of what we talked about today, I actually have a framework that you can just grab off my website. It's to create restful sleep habits. And it's something you could download today and start sleeping better today. So that would be a great place to start.
That's incredible. And all that will be in the show notes. So I'll make sure the website link's in there, Instagram, the link to download the guide, all those things will be available for everybody, everybody tuning in today. So listen, this has been an incredible conversation. What I will say as well, that I just thought of, is if you are going to go and download those links and go on Instagram, don't do it an hour before bed. Wait till tomorrow, depending on what time you're listening. But this has been an incredible conversation. I'm so honored to have had you on the show today, Funke. It's been incredible. I've learned a lot, and I love that we're able to take those things and tie them into health and fitness and help people along their journeys, because that's what we're all about, helping busy parents move more and feel good. And, you know, it's so important that we know that sleep is part of that process. So much value. Thank you so much. Any last thing you'd like to share before we wrap up the show today?
Yes. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. I mean, I think you're changing lives. You have no idea. I'm sure you do, but just to reiterate, because this is much needed. And just everyone out there, you can do it. You can prioritize sleep to live your fullest potential and to achieve your goals. And it starts tonight. You can actually start doing it tonight.
Amazing. Absolutely, you can. Listen, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Again, as I said, this has been an incredible conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you've got a lot of takeaways. Please share it with someone you love and care about, especially if it's someone that's struggling with their sleep, so they can help them start tonight by getting those better sleep patterns. That's it for today, and we'll catch you on the next episode.